Welcome back. This time we're talking about It, based on the famous horror book by Stephen King. Now, before I get into the review itself, let me say first, thank you for the kind comments I got on my Hermine's About to Hit Us video from last week. Fortunately, we lucked out. The storm weakened considerably before it traveled almost directly over my house. My area, we had a lot of power outages. I think like 85% of my community was out of power, at least at the beginning. We fortunately got our power back pretty quickly. Not much damage other than a lot of trees down and things like that. So very fortunate in that regard, much better off than the folks down in South Florida. But did want to say thank you, and now we're back into action with videos. It did take me a little while to get around to seeing it, because even after the storm was over and it was clear that we were going to be okay, we were one of the main thoroughfares outside of the interstates for people to get back to South Florida, so traffic and gas shortages were still a problem, and it's about a 45-minute drive to get to the theater I usually go to, so I had to wait until traffic was at a point where I could get gas and get back home. So let's talk about it. Now, as I've said multiple times in previous reviews, I do my best to not look at any reviews. I don't read reviews. I don't watch other people's reviews on YouTube until I have a chance to do my own. But with a movie like It, when it breaks box office records and there's just so much buzz around the release and I have to wait a week to go see it, I heard a lot about this movie. I heard a lot of very positive things about this movie. I was really looking forward to it. I didn't hate The Dark Tower as much as a lot of other people did, but the idea of getting a genuinely good Stephen King adaptation of one of his famous books had me very psyched. I'm a huge Stephen King fan and was, like I said, really looking forward to this movie. So I went in with pretty high expectations. A friend of mine and I both went to go see this. I had just finished reading the book prior to going to see it. She had not read the book. And we both did not like this movie at all. I was honestly shocked how little I liked this movie. Based on everything I had heard, I went in thinking I was going to see a very solid movie, and it really wasn't. Not scary, first of all. I've said multiple times I'm not a big fan of horror. You're not going to see a lot of horror reviews on this channel, and one of the reasons why I don't go to horror films is I tend to scare easily, and I just don't enjoy going to movies like that. So when I say I wasn't scared at all by this movie, that should tell you something. There was maybe one or two moments where I sort of jumped. But honestly, I think I jumped more times during An American Assassin, which I saw earlier in the day, than I did in It. There's just not a lot of scary moments, at least to me. Now, obviously, as I said a little while ago, I did read the book before going into this, so I'm going to be coming at this movie as someone who has read the book. And what I found was, as a comparison, is that a lot of the whys in Stephen King's novel, why things were happening the way they were, why certain characters survived certain situations when others did not, were pretty well articulated in the book, and was sort of the common thread that tied all of these events together. None of that makes it into the movie, which makes the movie seemingly rather random. Our main characters survive seemingly because they are main characters and are meant to survive. There's never a why given. The basic story is in this movie as it is in the book. We have the small town of Derry. In the book, it was in the 1950s. This is turned to the 1980s in the movie. But a evil creature, often portraying itself as Pennywise the Dancing Clown, portrayed by Bill Skarsgård, is terrorizing this town and killing children. We get to see this in the opening moments of the film, and in fact, that's probably the best moment of the movie, and it pretty much never regains the tension or just skill that we get to see in that opening sequence. Our main characters are a group of 7 children who, for one reason or another, survive their encounters with Pennywise and come together to battle against this evil. There's a lot of changes to the specifics from book to movie, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but as I said, we never get the whys or just the connecting tissue to the skeleton of this story, and for me it just sort of falls apart. When I reviewed The Dark Tower, I came at it, as I did with this film, as a fan of the book, as someone who is well versed in what happens in the book. And there was obviously a lot of changes in that movie as well. And what I said in that movie was, if you are a fan of the book, you're probably not going to like the changes. And if you haven't read the book, you're probably going to be confused. Now, as I said, the friend I went with to go see this, she had not read the book, and when we were discussing the movie afterwards, she said that nothing that happened in the movie made sense. She was left confused by everything, and that's because what we get in this movie is a combination of allusions to things from the book that never actually make it into the book. You'd only know about it and what these scenes are supposed to represent if you've read the book. And then just a bunch of random scenes that never seem to have a reason for them to occur the way they are. Because, as I said, we don't ever get the whys. In the book, it's specifically explained why the various characters survive their encounters against it. And that was why this group of 7 children were so important. There's a deeper meaning behind their grouping. In the movie, it's always just seemingly a random group of kids that get together and decide to battle against it. Now, honestly, even with all of these story problems, it could have still provided a decent horror experience if the film itself was actually scary. But like I said at the beginning, it really isn't. Neither myself nor my friend really found ourselves scared at all. There was like one moment where we both jumped because they sort of there was sort of a surprise thing, but beyond that, it really wasn't. And the biggest problem with it is the fact that a lot of the special effects, when they do Pennywise as sort of a more than just him as a dancing clown, is atrocious. I mean, the special effects are bad. I mean, there are 2 or 3 times where I'm guessing I was supposed to be really scared, and honestly, it looked ludicrous. I mean, I was trying not to laugh out loud. It was that bad. And when I'm struggling to not laugh in moments where I'm supposed to be scared out of my mind, that's a serious, serious problem. Honestly, I was highly disappointed with this movie. Obviously, it's getting a lot of really good buzz. A lot of people are apparently really liking this movie, so if you're interested in it, I'm not going to say don't go see it, because it does appear that my friend and I are in the minority in our opinions of this movie, and you may well like it, but it's not one that I can in any way recommend. I was very, very disappointed with this movie, and now I do want to say, as my disappointment being very clearly stated, I did enjoy the performances of the various kid actors in this movie. I thought they all did well. I thought they did the best they could to give their characters a bit of personality when in a film that's 2 hours and 15 minutes versus a book that's like 1,300 pages. The movie really doesn't give us much in the way of character development for any of these kids. They basically become kind of boilerplate. They take like one aspect of each character and kind of emphasize it. Like, you have the girl character, you have the stutterer, you have the chubby kid, you've got the Jewish kid, you've got the kid that does some wisecracks, but we never really get enough of him to understand that that's really what he does. He just happens to say inappropriate things at times, but we never really get enough of each character to really care much about them. The only reason I cared about them as much as I did was because of my connection to them from the books. So yeah, I'm really this disappointed and this far off from what seems to be the general opinion on a movie like this. but it's just not one that I liked at all. So, obviously, as I've said, I'm probably in the minority on this, but if you did see it, what did you think about it? I know this review's a bit late because of the hurricane and everything, so I'm figuring most of y'all have already seen it. But do let me know, what did you think about it? And let me know if you're a fan of the book or you went into the movie having never read it. I had never actually read the book until very recently. I never saw the TV movie that was made, I think around like 1990. So I figured if I was ever going to read it without knowing what happens, this was my last chance. So I've spent the last few weeks reading it and actually finished it waiting for the hurricane to arrive instead of actually going to see the movie. But let me know where you come from and if you like this movie or not. As always, you can subscribe to my channel, check out some of my other reviews, and until next time, I'll see you at the movies.